Get ready for twists, turns, and unexpected alliances that will leave you wanting more. Fuyumi was in her room filling out papers for the school where she worked. It had only been a couple of days since the sports festival. Fuyumi couldn't stop thinking about that boy, Izuku, for some strange reason. She didn't know why, but there was something about him that interested her. Stop thinking about him and focus, blushed Fuyumi as she tried to fill out the document. Why can't I stop thinking about him? She was confused. She didn't know why she thought about him. But every time she did, she blushed and felt her heart beat faster. Maybe I've had too much coffee these past few days, Fuyumi said, still blushing. I need to take a break from work. Fuyumi rested her head on the table and used her arms as a pillow. What's happening to me? She said, still confused, still thinking about Izuku. Fuyumi had never been interested in any boy because she always wanted to focus more on her family and herself. But now she couldn't stop thinking about Izuku, and she didn't know why. I have to see him to clarify what I feel, Fuyumi said, lying on her arms. Fuyumi had always had those childish dreams. The typical ones where one day she would find her Prince Charming, who would take her on his horse to get married and have children. Maybe it was the lack of affection in her childhood that made her think so childishly. Suddenly she heard someone opening the door of the house. She knew it was Shoto. She thought of an idea and quickly left the room. Shoto, said Fuyumi, coming out of the room. Fuyumi looked at her brother who was coming home from school. Her brother looked at her with his usual neutral gaze. What's wrong? Shoto asked, looking at Fuyumi. Do you know that boy Izuku? Fuyumi said, blushing, approaching Shoto. Yes, why? Shoto said, still looking at Fuyumi. Well, I had an idea and... Shoto, Endeavor said, coming out of his room. Fuyumi was scared by her father's shout. I just read the form where you agree to be in my agency, Endeavor said with a big smile. Since you fought that kid, you've changed, you finally understood. Shoto ignored Endeavor. What were you saying, Fuyumi? Shoto asked, looking at his sister. Well, I thought of thanking that boy for helping you, blushed Fuyumi. Good idea, my daughter, we must thank that boy for helping you understand finally, Endeavor said with a big smile. How do you plan to thank him? Well, I thought of a dinner or something, blushed Fuyumi. It seems like a very good idea, said Endeavor, thinking of an idea. If you'll excuse me, I have something to do. Endeavor went to his room. Fuyumi sighed in relief. What are you planning, Fuyumi? Shoto asked, catching Fuyumi's attention. Well, I already told you, said Fuyumi, looking at Shoto. I know, but it's very strange that you're doing this, said Shoto, looking at Fuyumi. What do you mean? Said Fuyumi, confused. You would never have suggested that. Lately, you've been acting very strange, wandering around the house and blushing all the time, said Shoto, looking at Fuyumi. Something's wrong, and I have the feeling it has to do with Midoriya. And no, of course not, said Fuyumi, blushing. You, more than anyone, know I'm not interested in having a boyfriend. Then why do you blush when I mention him? Shoto asked, still looking at Fuyumi. Fuyumi blushed even more at hearing Shoto. I just invite him, and that's it, said Fuyumi, leaving for her room. Once Fuyumi got into her room, she lay on her bed. Shoto had made her doubt her feelings. Did she like Izuku? No, I don't even know him yet, and besides, he's much younger than me, blushed Fuyumi, looking at the ceiling lying down. But if I don't like him, why did I suggest the dinner idea? Fuyumi felt her heart beating faster. It's true, I invited him to clarify my feelings, said Fuyumi, putting her hand on her chest and feeling her heart beat rapidly. But I feel like Shoto's right. Fuyumi kept thinking about Izuku. Her heart was beating rapidly. She covered her face with her pillow. I seem like the typical teenage girl in love, blushed Fuyumi with the pillow on her face. I'm already 22, I should stop thinking about this. Fuyumi kept thinking about Izuku. She might be doubting her feelings, but in a way, she knew what she felt. What if she was in love with him? She is older than him, she had never thought about having a relationship, which was strange since she was supposed to be thinking about marriage at her age. She had never been interested in any boy, and no boy had been interested in her. She thought she would never have a relationship, but now she didn't know what to think. Izuku was in his room lifting weights. He would soon enter an agency and be closer to being a hero. All Might had told him he would be with his old master. He was a little nervous because All Might looked scared when he mentioned it. His thoughts were interrupted when he saw he had a call. Izuku saw that Shoto was the one calling him. Todoroki, what's up? Said Izuku, answering the call. Midoriya, my sister invited you to dinner, said Shoto through the speaker. Izuku was surprised and blushed to hear that. What? Said Izuku, still surprised. She likes you and wanted to invite you to dinner at home, said Shoto through the speaker. She said it was to thank you for helping me at the festival, even my father agreed. Well, okay, said Izuku, blushing. The day was about to end. Fuyumi was in the living room, lost in thought. Fuyumi, I already told Midoriya about the invitation, said Shoto, catching Fuyumi's attention. Oh, perfect, said Fuyumi, smiling as she looked at her brother. But I told him your true intentions. I told him you like him, and that's why you invited him, said Shoto before going to his room. What? Blushed Fuyumi, looking at Shoto go to his room. Fuyumi blushed at that. Silly Shoto, said Fuyumi, covering her face with her hands. How am I going to explain to him that it was an accident? Fuyumi thought about Izuku again. Maybe Shoto is right. Fuyumi felt a bit nervous. Her visitor would arrive in a few minutes. The food she was preparing was almost ready. Her father would join them as a thank you to Izuku for helping Shoto. Shoto would join them because he considered Izuku his friend. But Fuyumi was totally nervous. Is it too late to back out? Fuyumi said nervously. Why did I even suggest this? Fuyumi was still quite confused about her feelings. Originally, dinner was meant to resolve her doubts, but now she was afraid. She didn't know what he was like, she felt excited to meet him but also fearful. Relax, you'll be fine, Fuyumi said nervously. Are you nervous about meeting Midoriya? Shoto said behind her. Fuyumi was startled by Shoto's sudden appearance. She blushed upon hearing him. And no, I just want to make a good impression, Fuyumi said, blushing. So, you're nervous about meeting him, Shoto said, looking at Fuyumi. Well, Fuyumi said, feeling a bit nervous. Shoto analyzed his sister. You have a lot in common, Shoto said, looking at his sister. You'd make a cute couple. Fuyumi blushed at Shoto's words. Since she planned the dinner, Shoto had been teasing her about it. Even though Shoto didn't mean to tease her. Stop saying silly things, blushed Fuyumi. I'm just speaking the truth, Shoto said, looking at Fuyumi. And remember, I told Midoriya how you really feel. You said nonsense, I just want to thank him for helping you, blushed Fuyumi. Stop lying to yourself, Fuyumi, Shoto said, approaching his sister. I've seen how you start to drift off out of nowhere, how you blush every time I mention him, I even saw you looking up reports about him on the computer. Fuyumi blushed and got a little upset. Why are you going through my things? Fuyumi said, annoyed and blushing. First, answer me, Shoto said in front of her. Fuyumi felt trapped. She had no other choice. I don't know, I invited him to find out how I feel, but also to thank him for helping you, blushed Fuyumi. Shoto examined his sister to see if she was lying or not. You would have told me, I'll try to help you, Shoto said, moving away from Fuyumi. It's not necessary, Fuyumi said, looking at Shoto. The last time you tried, you told him to come because I like him. Did I lie? Shoto asked Fuyumi, then turned around. Anyway, sorry for going through your things. Shoto went to his room to tidy up a bit. Fuyumi blushed a little. Maybe she did like Izuku. Izuku was on his way to the Todoroki house. He was passing through a very expensive neighborhood. There were houses that seemed to be worth a lot of money. Some were modern, others had rustic styles, and others had classic Japanese touches. Izuku felt like he didn't belong in a place like that, but he had to go because of Todoroki's invitation. Why did I accept? Izuku wondered. Izuku was nervous because Endeavor would be at dinner. He knew Endeavor wasn't a very friendly hero, and he didn't know if he would do something wrong to annoy him. What if he said something he shouldn't? Or if he accidentally revealed All Might's secret? He didn't know what to do being with such an elegant family as theirs. I'll also meet Shoto's sister, blurted out Izuku, blushing. Since Shoto mentioned that she invited him because she had feelings for him, he couldn't stop thinking about it. Although he believed Shoto said that just to tease. But he has never lied or teased anyone, Izuku said nervously and blushing. I should stop thinking about that. Have I dressed too formally? Izuku looked at his suit. It was a green tuxedo he had kept for a while. He was impressed that it still fit him. He also wore his red sneakers. He supposed he should dress well to go to a house like theirs. It must be this one, Izuku said as he looked at a house in front of him. It was an old Japanese house. It looked quite expensive. That made Izuku even more nervous. Everything is ready, Fuyumi said with a big smile. Fuyumi had arranged everything. The table was set, thanks to her brother Shoto. The food was prepared. Maybe I should change, Fuyumi said as she headed to her room. I still have time. Suddenly Fuyumi heard someone knock on the door. She turned pale because she knew it was Izuku. She looked at her clothes and they looked quite messy. I don't have time, Fuyumi thought nervously. Fuyumi quickly went to her room but found Shoto there. Why aren't you opening? Shoto said, looking at his sister. I look ridiculous, I need to change, Fuyumi said, looking at her brother. Shoto was dressed quite normally. He had an unbuttoned jacket revealing a white t-shirt, jeans, and sneakers. What are you dressed like that for? Fuyumi asked nervously since she wanted everything to be perfect. It doesn't matter anymore, just let him in while I change, said Fuyumi, rushing to her room to put something on. She had to look good to meet the love of her life. I think I shouldn't exaggerate either, blushed Fuyumi as she thought about it. Izuku was standing in front of the door waiting for a response. Suddenly the door opened, and he saw Shoto. Midoriya, sorry for the delay, Shoto said, looking at Izuku, come in. Izuku entered the house quite nervously. He looked inside and saw very fine furniture and very elegant things. That made Izuku nervous. My father will be here in a moment, and my sister won't be long either, said Shoto examining Izuku. You didn't have to come so formally. Well, I thought you'd take longer, that's why I suggested sending a limo to pick you up, Shoto said, still looking at Izuku. It wasn't necessary, Izuku said with a nervous smile. You owe that boy, a voice said beside him. Izuku turned to see where the voice was coming from and saw Endeavor. He was wearing a black suit with a red tie. Even without his flames, he looked quite threatening. You dress well, Shoto should learn from you, Endeavor said, looking at Shoto. Thank you, Izuku said nervously. Well, I invited you for helping my son understand he should use his fire, Endeavor said with a smile, although it was my daughter's idea. By the way, where's Fuyumi? She went to fix herself up, Shoto said, looking down the hall where the rooms were. Just as he said that, Fuyumi came out of her room. Now she was dressed in her usual attire, a pink wool sweater with a t-shirt and gray pants. She also wore her glasses. Fuyumi approached Izuku with a smile. Pleasure to meet you, I'm Fuyumi, said Fuyumi, smiling. Fuyumi didn't show it, but she was dying of nerves inside. And nice to meet you, I'm Izuku Midoriya. I know a lot about you, said Fuyumi with a smile. Izuku blushed at hearing that. Fuyumi got nervous when she realized what she said. Well done, Fuyumi, now you sound like a stalker, Fuyumi thought nervously. I think we should go eat, Endeavor said, looking at them both. The four of them were in the dining room sitting at a large table where they would eat. In front of them were several dishes prepared by Fuyumi. It looks delicious, Izuku said with a smile. Thank you, blushed Fuyumi. Don't be fooled, it's easy to cook with her quirk, Shoto said, looking at Izuku. The four began to eat. By the way, Midoriya, Endeavor said, looking at Izuku, I wanted to ask something. Izuku nervously looked at Endeavor. Are you All Might's son? Endeavor asked, looking at Izuku. Izuku got nervous because of that. Dad, Fuyumi said embarrassed. It's just that you have a quirk very similar to his, Endeavor said, looking at Fuyumi. Well, I'm not All Might's son, Izuku said a little nervously. Are you sure? Shoto asked, looking at Izuku. Stop making him uncomfortable, Fuyumi said embarrassed. Dinner was over. During dinner, the four talked about trivial topics. And Fuyumi learned more about Izuku. Without her realizing it, she stared at him and felt her heart beat faster. Izuku felt weird talking to Fuyumi, he felt his heart beat faster, but he figured it was because he always felt that way around women. I hope you liked the dinner, Fuyumi said with a smile. It was great, Izuku said with a smile. I think I should go now, it was nice meeting you. Izuku and Fuyumi said goodbye. Once Fuyumi closed the door, she sat on the floor. She felt her heart beating so hard that she thought it would burst out of her chest. She was totally flushed. She had an image of Izuku in her head that made her feel strange. She put her hand on her chest and felt her heart beating rapidly. Izuku, I like you. Fuyumi was at school taking care of the children. Luckily, her students weren't naughty, and her job wasn't hard. Even though she was a student teacher at an elementary school and only went occasionally. Though she always checked on her students, this time was different. Since the dinner where she met Izuku in person, she couldn't stop thinking about him. Finally, she realized her feelings for him. She liked Izuku. It's strange that I like him when he's younger than me, blushed Fuyumi. It's like falling for one of my students, only he's about 6 years younger. Fuyumi kept thinking about Izuku. It seemed impossible for them to be together. He was younger, and she was too shy to initiate a conversation. Even if they somehow became a couple, they wouldn't see each other much. He was still studying, and she had to focus on being a teacher. Although I had never thought about having a partner since I met him, blushed Fuyumi. Fuyumi tried to stop thinking about Izuku but couldn't. Perhaps being with him wouldn't be so bad. According to her brother, Izuku and she weren't that different. Although she needed to ask him properly. She began to imagine herself with Izuku. She imagined a scene where she looked into his eyes while he confessed his feelings. Just thinking about it made her blush. She imagined him approaching her, holding her waist close to him. Then he gently took her face and drew it close to his. When their lips were about to touch suddenly. "Teacher, we're done," said a girl in front of Fuyumi's desk. Fuyumi turned to see the girl with a small group of her students lined up behind her. Fuyumi hadn't realized she was still teaching. Please leave your work on the desk and sit while I review them," said Fuyumi, blushing as she adjusted her glasses nervously. "Are you okay, teacher?" asked the girl, looking at Fuyumi. "Why yes, I'm fine," said Fuyumi, still blushing. "Do you have a fever?" asked a boy in the line. "She looks red," asked another girl in the line. "I'm fine, Jay, just leave your work and go back to your seats," said Fuyumi, blushing. The children obeyed, leaving their work on Fuyumi's desk one by one. As the children returned to their seats, Fuyumi was thinking about Izuku. First, she had to decide if she really wanted to be his partner or not. And if she did, then she had to think of a plan. Fuyumi was leaving school. She hadn't focused much on reviewing the work because she was thinking about Izuku. Now she was on her way home, still pondering whether she should try to be Izuku's partner. "I should get to know him better first. He seems sweet, but maybe he's hiding something sinister," thought Fuyumi as she walked. "What if he does bad things in secret?" Fuyumi continued to ponder her dilemma about being Izuku's partner or not. She was so lost in her thoughts that she didn't notice she bumped into someone. The collision made Fuyumi fall on her backside, and her glasses fell off. Fuyumi couldn't see well without her glasses and tried to find them. My glasses," said Fuyumi, trying to search for her glasses with her hand. Sorry," said a familiar voice to Fuyumi. Here you go." The person she bumped into handed her glasses to her. Fuyumi put on her glasses and looked at the person. She was surprised to see Izuku. "Oh, why you're T. Todoroki's sister," said Izuku, blushing, as he extended his hand to help Fuyumi up. Fuyumi took Izuku's hand to get up. In the few seconds Fuyumi had to feel his hand, she could feel how soft and yet strong it was. After she got up, they looked into each other's eyes. Fuyumi noticed she was taller than him. She even had to tilt her head a bit. Sorry for bumping into you," said Izuku, a little embarrassed and blushing. Don't worry, it was my fault," said Fuyumi, blushing. Well, it was nice seeing you, miss," said Izuku with a nervous smile. Fuyumi saw his smile and felt mesmerized. His emerald eyes were bright, and his smile was beautiful to her. Fuyumi blushed a lot seeing him. "Just call me Fuyumi," said Fuyumi, blushing. Alright, Fuyumi, hope to see you later," said Izuku, blushing. I hope so too," said Fuyumi with a nervous smile. Izuku and Fuyumi said goodbye and went back on their ways. "I talked to him," they both thought, blushing. Fuyumi was at home, remembering her encounter with Izuku. She blushed recalling his smile and his eyes. Also, the softness of his hand and how kind he was to her. Her heart beat faster as she remembered that. She felt her face flushing a lot as she remembered it. It was a strange feeling, and she felt ticklish thinking about it. She felt butterflies in her stomach and her heart beating so hard it felt like it would burst out of her chest. Fuyumi put her hand on her chest, feeling her strong beats while thinking about Izuku. "I'm home," said Shoto entering the house. Fuyumi looked at Shoto. Shoto went to his room. Shoto, wait," said Fuyumi, catching her brother's attention. Shoto stopped before reaching the hallway and looked at his sister. "You once said that Izuku and I aren't so different," blushed Fuyumi. "In what ways are we similar?" Shoto was a bit surprised to hear that. "You're both shy and get nervous about everything, both very insecure but always caring about others, and you both blush at everything," said Shoto as he looked at his sister. Fuyumi blushed hearing how similar she and Izuku were. "Do you like Midoriya?" asked Shoto still looking at his sister. Maybe, said Fuyumi blushing. Shoto looked at his sister to see if she was lying or not. Then I'll try to help you, said Shoto before going to his room. Fuyumi was surprised by that. She blushed as maybe this way they both could be a couple. Just wait for me, Izuku. Izuku was on his way to UA. In recent days, he had been thinking a lot about Fuyumi. He didn't know why, but he couldn't stop thinking about her. Since that dinner day, he saw her beauty and was captivated. Her silky white hair with red strands, those eyes that seemed to hypnotize him, she was just perfect for Izuku. I should stop thinking like this, she's older than me and probably already has a boyfriend, thought Izuku, blushing. Besides, she's my friend's sister, I should respect her. Izuku kept walking but continued thinking about Fuyumi. He didn't know why, but thinking about her made him blush and his heart beat faster. He had never felt anything like this before and didn't know what it was. Midoriya, good morning, said Todoroki walking beside him. Izuku was a bit startled to see Todoroki next to him. He looked around and saw that they were at the entrance of UA. Gee, good morning, Todoroki, said Izuku, a little nervous. I didn't see you arrive, I suppose you came in a limousine. I came walking, said Todoroki as he walked alongside Izuku. Just because I'm rich doesn't mean I have a limousine. Izuku looked confused at Todoroki. Well, I do have a limousine, but not because I'm rich, said Todoroki looking ahead. Anyway, I came to ask you something. Izuku looked at Todoroki. Do you like my sister? Asked Todoroki without flinching. Izuku blushed and stopped upon hearing that. Maybe he did like her because of all the feelings he had towards her. But he wasn't sure. And no, said Izuku, blushing and nervous. You don't have to lie to me, I won't be upset, said Todoroki, looking at Izuku. Well, I don't know, said Izuku nervously. Todoroki glanced at Izuku and then looked ahead. I suspected so, we have to go or we'll be late, said Todoroki as he walked. Why yes, said Izuku catching up with Todoroki. Izuku was in the classroom. The break was about to begin, and all the students were leaving their classrooms to go to the cafeteria. Izuku got up from his seat and went to where Ida and Uraka were. Midoriya, said a voice, stopping him. Izuku turned to see where the voice was coming from, confused. He saw that it was Todoroki pointing his phone at him, and the sound of the camera could be heard several times. Izuku blushed. What are you doing? Asked Izuku, blushing and nervous. I'm taking pictures of you, said Todoroki as he lowered his phone and opened the messages. F for what? Asked Izuku, blushing. Nothing special, said Todoroki as he sent the photos. Fuyumi was lying on her desk at home. As always, she was thinking about Izuku. She knew she liked him, but she was still unsure if it was that or just curiosity. She was grateful because he saved her brother, but there was something more that interested her. Confirmed, I'm worse than a teenage girl in love, said Fuyumi, blushing. I've never experienced this before. Suddenly Fuyumi felt her phone vibrate. She unlocked it and saw that it was a message from Shoto. Upon opening it, she was surprised. There were several photos of Izuku. In the first ones, he looked quite confused, with a tender look of confusion. As she progressed through the photos, he appeared more flushed and nervous. Fuyumi blushed as she looked at the photos and felt her heart beat faster. Then she saw Shoto's message. Enjoy them. Fuyumi blushed even more at the message. Fuyumi looked at the photos tenderly. He's cuter than a kitten, said Fuyumi, blushing as she looked at the photos. Fuyumi kept looking at the photos and felt the urge to hug Izuku. She had never felt that before and blushed because of it. She saved the photos just in case. Just in case, said Fuyumi, blushing with a small smile. Fuyumi was in the living room of her house. Shoto had already returned a few minutes ago. She was sitting on a couch, thinking about Izuku. It had even become a habit for her. Fuyumi, said a voice next to her. Fuyumi turned to see Shoto with his phone in front of her. She could hear the sound of the camera and blushed knowing he was taking pictures of her. What are you doing? Asked Fuyumi trying to grab her phone. I'm taking pictures of you, said Todoroki as he moved away from his sister. What do you plan to do with them? Asked Fuyumi, blushing as she continued to try to take Shoto's phone. Sending them to Midoriya, said Shoto as he sent the photos. It's fair that both have photos of each other. Fuyumi blushed upon hearing that and quickly took Shoto's phone. Upon seeing it, she could see how he sent all the photos to Izuku. Fuyumi blushed and was in shock. You're the worst, said Fuyumi, handing him her phone. I'm just trying to help, said Shoto looking at his sister. It could make you two closer. Fuyumi looked confused at Shoto. Midoriya likes you too, said Shoto looking at his sister. Fuyumi blushed at hearing that. Before you speak, it's useless to deny that you like him, said Shoto looking at his sister. I can give you his number. I'm fine, don't worry about it, said Fuyumi blushing. Shoto examined his sister with his eyes. Fuyumi, you deserve to be happy, you've always cared about this family and about being a teacher, said Shoto looking at his sister. You should stop thinking about others and think about yourself, you should think about your future, and having a partner is part of that, and it's obvious that you want to be with Midoriya. Fuyumi was pensive. Shoto was right, she always worried about others, perhaps it was time to think about herself. I'll pass you his number, the rest is up to you, said Shoto before leaving for his room. Fuyumi was pensive. Perhaps she should try to get closer to Izuku. Izuku was in his room, pensive. He couldn't stop thinking about Fuyumi. It had become a habit for him to think about her. He was still confused about his feelings towards her. Suddenly he felt his phone vibrate and saw that it was a message from Shoto. Upon opening it, he was surprised to see several photos of Fuyumi. In the first ones, she had a confused look that made her look tender to Izuku. Then she started to blush, and he saw her trying to grab Shoto's phone. Izuku thought for a moment. Does that mean he sent my photos to her? Izuku asked himself, blushing. Izuku looked at the photos again and saved them, very embarrassed. Just in case. Fuyumi was looking at her phone with pictures of Izuku. For some strange reason, she couldn't stop looking at them. I know I like him, but I don't think I should be looking at his photos for so long, blushed Fuyumi, still staring at Izuku's pictures, but I keep looking at them anyway. Fuyumi placed her hand on her chest and felt her heart beating faster. As always, just seeing a photo of Izuku made her feel strange. Her heart beat faster, and she blushed too much. She fantasized about various scenes with him. They wanted them to happen someday, but she was too shy. The day she met him on the street, she couldn't speak properly because she was so nervous. Maybe I should wait for him to make the first move, blushed Fuyumi. Fuyumi still couldn't get too close to Izuku. Shoto said he would help her, but he hasn't really done anything. All he did was send her photos of Izuku and tell Izuku that Fuyumi likes him. Even though we live in the 21st century, women can also make the first move, blushed Fuyumi, thinking about approaching Izuku. Fuyumi didn't know what to do to get closer to Izuku. Shoto had given her Izuku's number, but she was afraid to send him a message. What if he didn't want to talk to her? What if he felt uncomfortable talking to her? What if he already had a girlfriend? What if he was gay? Too many questions, said Fuyumi, covering her face with her hands. Suddenly, Fuyumi felt her phone vibrate, and she could hear her ringtone. Fuyumi looked at her phone and saw that her father was calling her. Dad, what's wrong? Asked Fuyumi nervously. Fuyumi, your brother is in the hospital, and I need you to go see him, said Endeavor over the speakerphone. I would go myself, but I'm busy with some matters. Oh okay, don't worry, I'll go, said Fuyumi, a little nervous. Good, thank you, said Endeavor before hanging up. Fuyumi put her phone away and sighed. Why do you always get into trouble, Shoto? Sighed Fuyumi. Fuyumi was outside the hospital where her father had told her Shoto was. Fuyumi looked at the building, feeling a little nervous. She went in and went to the receptionist to ask where Shoto's room was. Gee, good morning, said Fuyumi, a little nervous. It's already afternoon, said the receptionist, who looked about the same age as Fuyumi. I'm here to see my brother, Shoto Todoroki, said Fuyumi, a little nervous. The receptionist was surprised to hear the last name. Of course, said the receptionist, quickly checking her computer. Fuyumi walked down one of the hospital corridors. She looked at the doors where several sick people were inside. Everything was so monotonous and boring. But Fuyumi only came to check on her brother's condition and then leave. When she reached the door where her brother was, she stopped. I hope it's not too serious, said Fuyumi, approaching the door. Fuyumi opened the door and saw her brother talking to two other guys. She was petrified to see a green-haired boy who looked familiar. It was Izuku. Izuku looked at Fuyumi, and their eyes met. It seemed like time had stopped. Fuyumi managed to appreciate his emerald eyes, and Izuku looked at Fuyumi's grayish eyes. A penetrating and beautiful gray for him. I didn't know he was here, thought Fuyumi nervously. I'm wearing the same thing I wore when we met, and when we ran into each other, he'll probably think I don't have any more clothes or that I'm. Fuyumi, what are you doing here? Todoroki interrupted her thoughts, looking at his sister. Fuyumi's thoughts were interrupted by her brother. She felt her cheeks blush, feeling a little embarrassed. My father sent me to see how you were, said Fuyumi, nervous and blushing. I see, said Shoto, looking at his sister. Good afternoon, miss, I suppose you must be Todoroki's sister, said Ida, introducing himself, moving his arms like a robot. Why yes, I'm Fuyumi, nice to meet you, said Fuyumi with a nervous smile. I am Tenya Ida, said Ida, moving his arms like a robot. Fuyumi recognized Ida's last name as she had already met his brother in Genium a long time ago. Hello, Miss Fuyumi, said Izuku with a nervous smile. It's been a while since we saw each other. Hello, Izuku, yes, it's been a while, said Fuyumi, nervous and blushing. The two looked at each other, blushing. You should be a couple, said Shoto, looking at both of them. They both looked at Todoroki, blushing and nervous. Todoroki, be respectful, said Ida, moving his hands like a robot. Whatever, I just came to see how you were and when you'll be leaving, said Fuyumi, nervous. I'm leaving now, goodbye. Fuyumi opened the door to leave. Midoriya, it's your chance, whispered Todoroki to Izuku. Fuyumi left the room. Izuku looked at the door nervously. He clenched his fists and stood up. Darn it, said Izuku, running to catch up with Fuyumi. Shoto and Ida looked at the door. Ida was confused, while Shoto was happy. That boy fills me with pride, said Shoto, looking at the door with a small smile. Fuyumi walked down the hallway. She was calmer after seeing Izuku. It had been a long time since she saw him, and when she saw him, she could feel her heart beating faster than before, and her blush even redder. Fuyumi, said a voice behind her. Fuyumi turned to see whose voice it was. She was surprised to see Izuku running toward her. She blushed when she saw he was only wearing the hospital gown. She could see his strong arms and a bit of his chest. Once Izuku was in front of her, he stopped. Izuku looked at Fuyumi, blushing. Izuku, what's wrong? Asked Fuyumi, blushing and a little nervous. Izuku felt nervous. But if he wanted to get closer to Fuyumi, he had to overcome his shyness. Fuyumi, I want to get to know you better, said Izuku, nervous and blushing. Fuyumi was surprised to hear Izuku. Finally, Izuku made the first move she had been waiting for so long. Fuyumi felt her heart beating so hard it felt like it would burst out of her chest. Fuyumi smiled at Izuku. I would like to get to know you better too, said Fuyumi, smiling and blushing. Fuyumi was at home. She was on her bed, bouncing with excitement. Her cheeks were flushed, and she wore a huge smile. Her heart was beating fast as she looked at Izuku's number on her phone. I can finally get closer to him, said Fuyumi excitedly. Now we can become friends and then get even closer and become boyfriend and girlfriend. After several years, we'll get married and have children. Fuyumi blushed even more at the thought of it all. Since she met Izuku, strange things had been happening to her. I'm acting very immaturely. I know it's the first time I like someone, but I shouldn't act like this, said Fuyumi, feeling a little embarrassed. Grow up, Fuyumi. Fuyumi kept looking at her phone. She was happy to have Izuku's number, but also a little scared because she didn't know how to act. Do I send him a message, or do I wait for him to do it? Said Fuyumi nervously as she looked at her phone. He took the first step, so I should show interest too. Fuyumi remained undecided. She continued nervously staring at her phone, unsure of what to do. Meanwhile, Izuku was still in the hospital, nervously looking at his phone. He had asked Fuyumi for her number, and she gave him hers. He was quite surprised that she accepted and didn't think she would. Aren't you going to send her a message? Todoroki asked, looking at Izuku. I don't know what to say, said Izuku nervously. I didn't think it would go this far. Midoriya, it's rude to ask a lady for her number and not call or text her to confirm it's her, said Ida, moving his arms like a robot. This is the first time I'm texting a woman other than my mother, Izuku said nervously. Izuku wasn't lying. He had already texted his mother, and he had Uraka's number, but he couldn't text her. Besides not knowing what to do, he was afraid of saying something that might offend Fuyumi. It would also be rude if he didn't text her back. Just send her a greeting, Todoroki said, looking at Izuku. I still don't understand, do you like Miss Fuyumi? Asked Ida, confused. Well. I'm not sure, it's strange, said Izuku nervously. Ida looked at Todoroki, expecting him to get angry or something. But he seemed totally normal. Todoroki noticed that. Don't worry, I've given you both permission to be a couple, Todoroki said, looking at Ida. I see, said Ida, then turning to Izuku. It's okay if you want to be in a relationship, but from what I see, she's older. I know, that's why I'm not sure if it's a good idea, said Izuku, holding his phone nervously. Izuku hadn't thought it through. She was older, and he was younger. As Todoroki had told him, she was a trainee teacher. If they were in a serious relationship, it would be strange because she was 22 and he was 15. Plus, Todoroki would be his brother-in-law. Haven't you heard that age is just a number? Todoroki said, looking at Izuku. Yes, but it's ethically and morally wrong, said Ida, adjusting his glasses. But if you both agree to that relationship and are happy, then I won't intervene. I just hope it won't affect your studies. We're not anything yet, said Izuku nervously. Not yet? Does that mean you want her to be your partner? Todoroki asked, looking at Izuku. Izuku blushed at Todoroki's words. And no, don't misinterpret me, I meant we're not even friends yet, said Izuku nervously and blushingly. I see, you should stop keeping Fuyumi waiting, said Todoroki, looking at Izuku. I'm sure she's waiting for your message. Izuku realized he still hadn't messaged Fuyumi. Izuku gathered his courage. He opened the chat to send a message to Fuyumi. Concentrate, Izuku, you must be polite when talking to her, I must think of something to say, Izuku thought nervously. Come on, Izuku, you can do it. Izuku typed in the chat. Every letter he typed made him more nervous. It took him 10 minutes to write, and with a lot of courage, he sent the message. Hi. 10 minutes for a simple hi. Izuku continued typing. Izuku, I'm Izuku Midoriya. Izuku realized he wasn't cut out for talking to women. Izuku looked at her contact icon. When he opened it fully, he could see a profile picture of Fuyumi. She had a smile that Izuku found beautiful. Izuku blushed at the sight of the photo. So? Todoroki said, getting Izuku's attention. Izuku realized he was still with Todoroki and Ida. I sent her a message, said Izuku nervously. Fuyumi was still on her bed, burying her face in her pillow as she kicked her feet. She was still unsure of what to send to Izuku. She seemed like a little girl doing that. What do I do? Said Fuyumi, still with her face buried in her pillow. Suddenly, she felt her phone vibrate. She quickly checked to see if it was Izuku. Her eyes lit up when she saw that it was Izuku who had messaged her. She already had him saved, so she knew it was him. She quickly unlocked her phone to see his messages. Izuku, hi. I'm Izuku Midoriya. Fuyumi felt her heartbeat faster. Once again, she seemed like a lovesick teenager. But she didn't care because she was happy that Izuku had messaged her. She quickly messaged back. Fuyumi, hi Izuku, I'm Fuyumi. Fuyumi sent the message but then regretted it. It seems like a friendly introduction, said Fuyumi nervously. Fuyumi saw the icon indicating that Izuku was typing. She was nervous to see what he would say. Izuku, I hope you got home safely. Fuyumi smiled at the message. Fuyumi, I got home fine, thanks for asking. Izuku, I'm glad. Well, I wanted to get to know you more because I thought it would be nice. Fuyumi, I know, you told me at the hospital. Izuku, oh, I forgot, sorry. Fuyumi blushed at Izuku's messages. Even through messages, he's quite sweet, said Fuyumi, blushing. Izuku, I hope you don't mind. Fuyumi, not at all, in fact, I'd be quite happy too. Izuku, I'm glad too. A few days had passed since Izuku left the hospital. Since then, he has been talking a lot with Fuyumi. They talked often and got along well. They got to know each other better and became very good friends. But since then, Izuku has been happier, always thinking of her, and his heart beat quickly when he did. Maybe he won't admit it, but he's in love with Fuyumi, though he knows their relationship is impossible. Deku, you seem happier lately, Uraka said, smiling as she ate. Really? Izuku asked, blushing as he was thinking about Fuyumi. Yes, you're always smiling and blushing. Is it because of a girl? Uraka asked cheerfully. And no, stammered Izuku, blushing and feeling a bit nervous. Uraka is right, ever since you talked to Miss Fuyumi, you've been different, Ida said, moving his arms like a robot. Izuku smiled at the memory. Ida was right, since that day, he couldn't stop thinking about her. But, as he had said, their relationship was impossible. Fuyumi? Uraka said, confused. She's Todoroki's sister, Ida said, looking at Uraka. You like Todoroki's sister? Uraka exclaimed, surprised. Their classmates sitting at the same table turned to look at Uraka, puzzled. Izuku blushed a lot and felt embarrassed as he saw all his classmates staring at them. Don't say it so loud, Izuku said, blushing, and no, I don't like her. Are you sure? Uraka asked, looking at Izuku. Sure, Izuku said, feeling a bit down. Izuku was lying, he knew he was in love with Fuyumi. But their relationship was impossible for several reasons. The age difference was the first, she was 22, and he was only 16. She was out of his reach, she came from a family of a powerful hero, while he only had the dream of becoming a hero. She probably already had a boyfriend, they shouldn't entertain the idea of being with her. He couldn't admit that he was in love with his friend's sister. Midoriya, break time is almost over, Ida said, interrupting Izuku's thoughts. Oh, yes, Izuku said, returning to eating. Uraka noticed that Izuku was down when Fuyumi was mentioned. She knew her friend was lying, she didn't know Fuyumi, but she must be someone interesting for Izuku to fall for her. She knew he was too shy to confess. And that's why she decided to help him. Classes were about to end. The last hour was almost uneventful. Professor Aizawa was sleeping in his sleeping bag while the others chatted. Izuku was in his place, feeling a bit down, remembering everything about Fuyumi made him sad. Maybe he could pretend he didn't like her, but his heart did. Uraka was worried and called all the girls. All right, girls, I need everyone's help, Uraka said, determined to help her friend. What do you need help with? Tsuyu asked, looking at Uraka. All the girls were gathered in a corner of the classroom. Uraka looked at everyone and then spoke. Deku is in love, Uraka said decisively. Everyone was surprised to hear that. I knew he always had a crush on you, Mina said, smiling. You and Midoriya make a cute couple, Yaoyorozu said, looking at Uraka. Are you planning to be his girlfriend? Toru asked excitedly. Uraka blushed at all those comments. And no, not me, he's in love with someone else, Uraka said, totally blushing. Then who is Midoriya in love with? Tsuyu asked, confused. He's in love with Todoroki's sister, Uraka said, more calmly. Everyone was surprised to hear that. What? Mina exclaimed. That was unexpected, Toru said, a bit stunned. I've seen he's in love with her but doesn't admit it, he's been down since she was mentioned, Uraka said, remembering what happened during the break, he's too shy to confess and needs help. Then did you call us to help Midoriya confess? Jiru asked while playing with her earphones. Why yes, Uraka said, a bit nervous. Uraka didn't know if they would accept. She wanted to help Izuku, but she couldn't do it alone. I'm in, Mina said excitedly. Me too, Toru said, excited. I'd also like to help Midoriya, Tsuyu said with a small smile. I see no reason why not, Yaoyorozu said, smiling. I guess there's nothing wrong with it, Jiru said, still playing with her earphones. Uraka smiled seeing all her friends helping her. So it's settled, Operation Izuyumi is underway, Uraka said, smiling, if anyone has a better name, feel free to tell me. Meanwhile, on the other side of the classroom, Izuku was still feeling down. He couldn't stop thinking about Fuyumi, and doing so only made him sad knowing he couldn't be with her. This had never happened to him before, he guessed it was what happened when you fall in love. Deku, stop being sad, it's damn annoying, Bakugo said, annoyed, looking at Izuku. Izuku looked up and saw Bakugo, who was angry. Hi, Kachan, sorry, I couldn't hear you, Izuku said nervously. Stop being sad or I'll punch you, Bakugo shouted angrily. I'm sorry, Izuku said nervously. Bakugo grumbled a bit and sat in his place, which was in front of Izuku. Izuku started thinking about Fuyumi again, and a silly idea crossed his mind. Kachan, have you ever been in love? Izuku asked nervously. Izuku didn't receive a response. He knew Bakugo would never answer him. So a girl makes you like this, Bakugo said without looking at Izuku. And never mind, Izuku said nervously. It was obvious you'd be like this, no one would want to be with you, Bakugo said without looking at Izuku. Izuku felt a bit sad hearing that. Maybe you're right, Izuku said, feeling down. A small silence ensued. Bakugo looked over his shoulder at Izuku. If you want to win her over, you'll have to try hard, women are complicated, Bakugo said, looking at Izuku over his shoulder, just be direct, and when you're ready, tell her how you feel. Izuku was surprised too. Hear Bakugo's advice and smiled. Thank you, Izuku said, smiling. Bakugo growled and looked ahead again. Classes had ended. Izuku was getting ready to go home. Deku, are you going to the station? Uraka asked, smiling. Why yes, Izuku said, a bit nervous. I hope you don't mind if I accompany you, Uraka said, smiling. And no, not at all, Izuku said with a nervous smile. They both left the classroom and headed for the UA exit. Deku, do you like Todoroki's sister? Uraka asked, smiling. And no, Izuku said, blushing and nervous, it was just an accident. Accidents don't exist, Todoroki said behind Izuku. Izuku was startled and turned around to see Todoroki. Todoroki, is it true that Izuku likes your sister? Uraka asked, looking at Todoroki. That's what I think, Todoroki said, walking next to Izuku. It's not true, Izuku said, blushing, and even if I liked her, we couldn't be together. That sounds like something someone in love and unwilling to admit it would say, Todoroki said, looking ahead. Besides, you always chat with her by message. But it's different from messaging to talking in person, Izuku said, blushing. I don't know how I'd act talking to her in person. Todoroki saw that the three of them were close to the exit. He looked at the exit and saw a limousine. You're lucky, now you can see how you'd act in front of her, Todoroki said, looking at the limousine. What do you mean? Izuku asked, confused. Izuku saw that they had already left UA, and the three of them were in front of a limousine. The door opened, and when he saw who came out of the car, Izuku was petrified. Shoto, our father told me to pick you up, Fuyumi said, getting out of the car. He told me that. Fuyumi was petrified when she saw Izuku. Seeing him, she blushed a bit. Fuyumi, aren't you going to say hi to Midoriya? Todoroki said, looking at Fuyumi. Hi, Izuku, Fuyumi said with a nervous smile. Hi, Fuyumi, nice to meet you, Izuku said with a nervous smile. They both looked at each other with flushed and nervous faces. You must be Todoroki's sister, Uraka said, interrupting their moment. Let me introduce myself, I'm Uraka, Deku's friend. Deku? Fuyumi asked, confused. That's what I call him, Uraka said, smiling. Deku has talked a lot about you. Fuyumi blushed at hearing that, but also couldn't help feeling excited inside. Izuku looked at Uraka, blushing and nervous. Really? Fuyumi asked, blushing and smiling. Yes, he told me you were very pretty, Uraka said, smiling. In fact, I think he said you were beautiful. You Uraka, Izuku exclaimed, totally blushing. Fuyumi couldn't help but smile and blush even more. He always talks about you. In fact, he told me he always thinks of you, Uraka said, smiling. She's right, during breaks, he always talks about you. Todoroki looked at Fuyumi. You too, Todoroki? Izuku asked, totally blushing. I once asked him what he wanted to eat, Todoroki said, looking at Fuyumi. He replied, I want to eat Fuyu. Todoroki, Izuku exclaimed nervously, interrupting Todoroki. Fuyumi was totally blushing and happy. Wow, Izuku, I didn't know you thought that of me, Fuyumi said, blushing and happy. I didn't say that, Izuku said nervously. It's not that I don't think you're pretty, why you're the most beautiful person I know, and I. Izuku was totally blushing and embarrassed. Fuyumi felt her heart beat faster hearing Izuku's words. I have to go now, I'll message you later, Fuyumi, Izuku said, running off. Izuku ran to the train station. I'm leaving too, bye, Uraka said before trying to catch up with Izuku. Deku, wait for me. Shoto watched the two of them walk away. Then he looked at his sister, who was totally blushing and had her hands on her cheeks. Izuku called me beautiful, Fuyumi said, blushing and smiling. We should go. Todoroki got into the limousine. Fuyumi got into the limousine. Her face was still flushed, and she couldn't stop thinking about Izuku's words. Maybe she does have a chance with him. Tonight she would have a good dream. Days kept passing, and nothing had changed. Izuku and Fuyumi continued talking through messages. But they reached a point where they couldn't hold back their feelings anymore. Still, neither of them had the courage to confess, and it began affecting them both. Maybe if I wait a couple more days, I'll gain the confidence to do it, said Fuyumi, lying sadly on her bed. Fuyumi had been wanting to confess for days. She had many opportunities but lacked the courage to do it. She was too shy. What if he rejects me, and our friendship becomes awkward? Fuyumi hugged her pillow tightly. I don't want to ruin our relationship just because of that. Fuyumi knew she was in love with Izuku. But still, she had doubts. What would people think seeing her older than him? Would he accept her confession? These and other doubts circled in her mind. Everything could change if she confessed. Being in love is very complicated, sighed Fuyumi. Since she met Izuku, she had felt feelings she had never experienced before. She felt something that had never happened with anyone else. Her chest felt warmer, her heart beat stronger, and her cheeks turned red every time she thought of him. She felt nervous around him and had a strong feeling of wanting to be with him until the day ended. But those thoughts would remain just thoughts if she did nothing. Fuyumi got up from bed and went to the living room to clear her mind and take a breath. These thoughts had been in her head for days, and she had been a little depressed lately. She went to a window and leaned her head out a bit to feel the breeze. She watched the sunset while reflecting on what to do next. "Fuyumi," a voice behind her said. Fuyumi turned to see her brother, Shoto. "You've been down these days," Shoto said, approaching his sister. "Is something wrong?" "Nothing, it's just that," Fuyumi said, looking at the sunset. "Is it about Midoriya?" Shoto asked beside her brother. Fuyumi nodded slightly as she continued to watch the sunset. "Fuyumi, do you like Midoriya?" Shoto asked, already knowing the answer. "Yes," Fuyumi said, feeling down. "What do you feel when you think of him or when you see him?" Shoto asked, looking at the sunset with his sister. Fuyumi put her hand on her chest. She squeezed her shirt tightly as she continued to watch the sunset. "I feel my heart beating fast and strong, as if it's leaving my chest. I feel my body trembling when I'm near him, my face turning red," Fuyumi said, still with her hand on her chest. "It's an incredible and indescribable feeling." Shoto looked at his sister and saw small tears forming in her eyes. "It's because if he rejects me," Fuyumi said, turning to her brother, "if he rejects me, then I don't know what I'll do." Fuyumi wiped away the tears that wanted to come out of her eyes. Shoto put a hand on her shoulder. "Fuyumi, since I've known Midoriya, I've seen that he's a shy and insecure guy," Shoto said as he looked at the sunset. "He loves you, and I have no doubt about that. I know confessing is difficult, but it doesn't matter. The embarrassment will only last a few minutes, but the regret of not telling him your feelings will last forever." Fuyumi looked at her brother. She never thought he would say those encouraging words. "But you have to understand that if you keep waiting, you'll keep hurting yourself. You don't know if someone else plans to go for Midoriya," Shoto said as he watched the sun set more and more, indicating that night would soon come. "He's also been feeling bad for not being able to confess. You know he likes you. You have to do something, sometimes waiting isn't the best option." Fuyumi listened to Shoto and started to reflect. Just imagining Izuku with someone else made her chest ache. She already had an image where she would be with Izuku as a couple, and the thought of him being with someone else hurt her. "You should think about it, your time is running out, Fuyumi," Shoto said, letting go of Fuyumi and turning away. Shoto was going to the hallway to get to his room. He stopped before reaching it. "I know Izuku would never reject you. He truly loves you, and you both deserve to be together," Shoto said before walking to his room. Fuyumi pondered Shoto's words. She looked outside the window. The sun had already gone, and the night had begun. Fuyumi needed to clear her mind. She didn't want Izuku to have someone other than her. "That's possessive jealousy, that's how toxic relationships are," Fuyumi said, embarrassed, "but still, I'll be selfish. If it's for him, then I'll do it." Fuyumi was determined. No matter how selfish it was, she had to be with Izuku. She wanted to have a relationship with him. She had to listen to her heart and not the negative thoughts in her mind. Izuku was at home lifting weights as he usually did. But this time, there was something different. Since he saw Fuyumi at school, he had been very down. His thoughts were focused on Fuyumi, they had been friends for a long time. But the fact that they were friends hurt Izuku. And it hurt him because he knew they would only be that. "She's older, she would never be with a guy like me," Izuku said, lifting the weights sadly. "She'll have a boyfriend and get married, and I wish I could be that person, but I know I'll never be." He had been having negative thoughts about it for several days. He couldn't stop thinking that he would never be Fuyumi's partner. That they would only be friends and nothing more. That he was just a simple boy with a silly dream of being with someone older than him. It hurt to think that she would spend her life with someone else and not with him. That she would probably laugh if he confessed his feelings. But still, his heart kept beating strongly at the thought of her. He couldn't change the feelings he had for Fuyumi, even knowing he would never be with her. Izuku accidentally activated full cowling while lifting the weight. He lifted the weight quickly. Suddenly, he felt full cowling simply turn off. It had deactivated, but not consciously. Izuku realized this and was confused. "What happened?" Izuku said, confused. Izuku tried to activate full cowling again but couldn't. He focused, but still couldn't activate it. He didn't know what was happening. It was as if his quirk had disappeared. After a few minutes, he managed to activate it again. "That was weird," Izuku said, deactivating full cowling. In those brief minutes that Izuku couldn't activate full cowling, he felt a familiar sensation. A sensation he had felt for most of his life. He felt as if he were quirkless again.